In this video I'm going to show you the professional way of how to get rid of rust on a wheel arch. The vehicle I'm going to demonstrate this on is an Audi A5. So here it is, the Audi, and as you'll see it is a little bit rusty. So we're going to take them bits of rust, the rust blebs out, going to take them back, sand them out. We're going to put something on there to stop it coming back, and also we're going to catch this front door. So this front door, you can see it's got a bit of rust on that edge as well, so we're going to catch that in. I'll end up having to paint the full door for that. I'll blow the colour through from the quarter when I've repaired the rust on the quarter, and I'll blend straight through into that door, take the colour out through the door, and then lacquer the full door. I've took this wheel off now, and I've took the inner wheel arch liner out so we can get onto the back of this wheel arch when we clean it up. Also undone that rear bumper, freed that off so we can get in and around there. Maybe have to take that light out and pop this off to get around it a bit more. We'll have a look at that when we come to it, when we get further on with the repair. Something I've noticed is there's a bit of a run along this line on here. I'm not sure if you can see. I'll just try and move the camera about. You might see there's a bit of a run along that line there where it's had some paint work before. I'm thinking that this sill cover is going to have to come off because there's a little bit of spider marks of some rust along there. I'm not one to just flat that down and paint over it. I think I'm going to have to take this sill cover off to do it properly. So I've got that sanded back nicely with a soft pad on the grinder, and then I've gone over it with a DA with 120 grade disc on it. So as always, things have really got interesting here. There's always something else. Every job you do, there's always something else, but you just will not believe this. Let me show you. Remember this plastic sill cover trim I told you about that I said I might have to take off? I decided I'll take it off because I wanted to get to these bits here. I'm not the kind of person that I just rub them down and paint over it. I like things to be done properly. Anyway, I've took the sill cover off, and as you can see, it's opened up a not so lovely surprise here for me to have to put right. Not very good for the customer either. I'm going to have to get in contact with the customer and let him know there is a bit more to do on this job. So yeah, not good. Anyway, I'm going to do my last bit on this job tonight. I'm going to get some cure rust, some rust treatment on that arch, and then I'm going to pack up and go in the house. I'll come back to it tomorrow and carry on with the repairs. So this has all been in filler before, it's been repaired before, probably rusted before, because I can't see any damage. Had they have put a rust converter on before, something to hold back the rust, a bit like this here, it probably wouldn't have rusted back. Certainly if they'd put a liquid metal on it, a hard metal filler also, that really does help as well. So I'm just going to put that on there, leave it overnight, and come back to it in the morning. Right, that's me definitely done for this evening. I'm going to get packed up, wrapped up, and I'm going to come back in, get back on with this in the morning after I spoke to the customer, and we'll have to see what we're going to do with that rust on the sill. Back in the workshop this morning, and it is cold. So my thermometer in the workshop is saying it's 3 degrees. Outside it's -1. So as you can see, we've still got plenty of snow laid around outside. It's going to be interesting to see if I can get this booth up to temperature when I do the paint job. Talking of paint, the first thing we need to do this morning is order the paint for the car. So most of the time with Audis, you'll find the paint code in the boot of the car, and it'll be on a sticker just like that, and it generally says something like lack or paint, and the code on this car is LY9T. That's the colour code for this car. Ring up the paint shop, they'll know exactly what colour it is. If the sticker's not there, it's generally under here. If it's not under there, it will be in the booklet for the car in the glove box most of the time. So that's where the paint codes generally are on Audis. By the way, when I finish this job and I put the video together, I may or may not put music in the video for this job. So if you wouldn't mind, in the comments, let me know if you would prefer music in the video or you prefer the videos without music. Just let me know. I haven't decided yet whether I'm actually going to put music in the video or not, but just give me a bit of feedback in the comments. That'd be absolutely fantastic. Back to this job. Last night, the last thing that we did to this job was we put some rust converter on here on this arch, and we put a little bit on this door. So it's gone off, and when I come in here today, I have actually given it a light sand down and I've put a bit more on there because I wasn't happy with how it was. It had a bit of a yellow tint to it, and really it wants to be sort of a blue colour, white, blue colour, or black even, depending on the stuff that you're using. Now, I also mentioned last night that I was going to have to ring the customer up to speak to him about the rust that we found on the sill. He was happy for me to go ahead and weld this up. I don't think there's many other options really. It needs doing, we can't leave that, so I'm getting on with that at the same time. Just giving this a scuff off now on the arch, and I'm going to put some of this filler in, this metal filler, so it can be going off while I'm welding up that hole in the sill. When I'm dealing with pitted metal due to rust, I like to use a proper hard metal filler like the one I'm using. Then I'll use a standard filler, something that you would use on dents, and then I like to finish it off with a dolphin glaze or a stopper just to mop up any little pit holes that might be in the filler. It's a process I use because over time I found this is what works best. Obviously I treat the metal first. That's the metal filler that I've used, and I'm just going to use a heat gun to get that going off. It'll help it to go off while I'm welding up the hole in that sill. Right, where are we at? That is welded up now, and I've put some filler on there, some metal filler and a bit of normal filler just to tidy it up. The arch, I've knocked that metal filler down that I had on there, and I've put some of that normal filler on there. Normal filler is in the bowl that I've used on another video the other week. It's not like in the cold. It's not like in the cold, this stuff. It's spreading out quite thick. It's not flowing out, not as smooth on the panel in the cold. Anyway, when that's gone off hard, I'll knock that down and then I'll go over it with some of this stuff. Ultra fine finishing glaze, dolphin glaze, or stopper as I call it. So I'll go over it with some of that stuff, nice thin stuff, easy to apply, nice and it'll skim over it, fill any pinholes, and then we'll knock that down and then get the job into primer. So I've noticed a couple of things. There's an out over on there, and this is dented in here. While waiting for some filler to go off in the rear wheel arch, I decided to straighten the front door. I used a rubber hammer so I didn't chip the paint on the inside door edge. The filler had now gone off from the rear wheel arch, so I knocked it down with the DA. Once I've knocked the top off with a DA, I levelled it off with a block. While I was blocking the filler down, I had a delivery. It was the paint. So I've had a delivery, and I've got some bits and bobs down here. This is what I've had delivered. So, before the week has even started, well, it has started, but money coming out of my pocket before I've even earned any. So there'll be 90 quid there. The gloves, there'll be 7 quid. Overall, 7 quid. We've got 2 bills here. One's for 40 quid, and the other one is for... The other one's for 60 quid. So another 100 quid there, and that's for a foam edge, some masking tape, 800 wet flat, and paint. So there's over 200 quid there in materials. Back to the filler work. So far I've added a coat of filler to this rear arch. I've skimmed over that with a dolphin glaze stopper, and that's what I'm knocking down now. Once I'm happy with the filler work, it'll be time to get it into primer. Best not forget about that door edge. A light skim of dolphin glaze will sort that. Moving forward onto the next stage of this job, I'm wet flatting all the bodywork that's to be painted. I'm using 800 wet or dry on a block, and this is to create a key for the paint to stick to the car. This is a messy job and not nice at this time of year, but it's a must if you don't want the paint to come back off the car. Onto the masking now, and we're almost ready for primer. We're going to be using a Roberlo high build. Now that that's all prepped up and masked up, we're going to get some primer on the job, and we're going to be using the Roberlo multi-filler. So I'm just going to put that primer through a strainer, and once that's in the gun, we're ready to go. When you're priming your repair, it's important not to take the primer up to the masking tape. If you do, it'll create a step, and even when you've prepped up the car before paint, it's possible you could see that step through the paint when it's finished. To prevent this from happening, mask off a bigger area around the repair like I have in the video. Back mask, and again, don't take that primer up to the tape. Now the car's in primer, it's time to prep it up for paint. First I give it an aerosol black guide coat, and then I blocked it off with a 240 grit. I then went over it with 800 wet or dry on a block. After that I cut it in with a grey Scotch pad and some prep and blend paste. And as you'll see, I had a nice surprise when I went to get some fresh water. In this clip I'm doing a bit of 800 wet flat preparation, however the head cam angle isn't the best. Anyway, I'm sure you know what I'm doing through previous footage, so let's move on to the next stage. And the next stage is masking the vehicle off, ready for paint. Again, it's time consuming, but it's got to be done, and it's got to be done right. I think we're ready. We are all masked up. Time to get some paint mixed. So the colour's already been mixed at the paint shop. All I've got to do now is give this a good mix up, and then I need to thin it out with some thinners. So we've got 200 there. We'll go to 400. So that's 50-50. Give that a mix and that will do. So I'm going to start by putting the base coat on with my Iwata LS400 paint gun. I'm using Profix paint with a 1.3 tip in the gun. I start by dusting the first coat on and drying it with the air in the gun. Then I go on to apply 2 more heavier coats, and then lastly I add a drop coat. That drop coat is just a dusting over the panel to make sure all the paint is uniform. I'm leaving 15 minutes drying time between each coat, that's generally what's recommended. Also, I'm tacking off the panels in between each coat. When I'm happy with my finish, I apply the lacquer. So it's time to put some lacquer on, a little tip, 30 seconds with the lacquer in the microwave. It's very cold, it'll help it flow. Last thing I did after applying the lacquer was use a Pro XL fade out thinners to melt that lacquer in on the blend. I use various different lacquers depending on what I'm doing. On this job I used an old favourite. I used a Max Mayer for this job. I've not used this clear coat for a while. So a lot of clear coats, well, they're not all the same anyway when you put them on, put it this way. Some will go on thicker than others. Some they're easier to apply. But at the end of the day, when the weather's cold, it makes a big difference to applying your clear coats. So the temperature is like 17.5 degrees in here. I couldn't push it anymore. Look at that. The cheek. Well, it's obviously started to go off. So it's been on there probably 15-20 minutes now. There's a few bits in it. It's not that bad. It's a little bit orange peely in places. But I would rather that than there be runs. So it's a cold day. Did manage to get the paint booth up to 17.5 degrees, but it's not ideal really when you're painting. So I think minimum is like 18 degrees, nearly there, but still 18 degrees, it's not great. Warmed up the lacquer in the microwave, little trick, but still it's only going to stay like to a certain temperature in the gun for so long while you're applying it in the booth. I've come in early this morning, I've put the heat lamps on the job, and now it's time to wet flat the side and polish it all up. So I'm just going to go over the whole job in small circles. This is time consuming, but it's a job that's got to be done. It is time consuming. It's very time consuming, and that's why I'm not going to put you through it. Basically, it all needs to be wet flatted down with 1500, then a 2000 grade, then it needs to be gone over with a 3000 grade on a DA. Yep, that's right, that fresh paintwork has to be sanded back down and then polished back up. It is a rotten job. After spending hours wet flatting the paintwork and then polishing it back up, it was time to build up the car. The car had some paintwork before, so it had previously been stripped before. There were some bits and bobs that needed to be glued after they were already glued. I forgot to mention, the car had to be demasked before the build up. Remember that hole in the sill? This is what it looks like now. When we're tightening wheels, you know, we're not far off looking at the job and seeing what it looks like now it's complete. For a quick refresh, this is what the wheel arch looked like when the car come to me on Monday morning. And after a hard week of work, this is what the wheel arch looks like now.